Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside Tim Watts, site publisher for BamaOnLine.com. It is a Wednesday, May the 8th, and we've got a lot to get into, Tim Watts. We're going to talk some portal as it relates to Alabama coming up a little bit later in the program. We'll also, as we always do, have our Round Table Mailbag for you to wrap things up a little bit later. We're going to talk some early football lines for the Alabama Crimson Tide, where the 2024 season is related. Big news for Nate Oates on the scheduling front here in the last 24 hours. We'll talk about that as well. And Tim, what we're going to start with, though, and I know this sport is near and dear to your heart, golf. Let's talk some golf, Tim Watts. Region's tradition at Greystone Golf and Country Club there in the Birmingham area. You've got two Alabama football coaches out there this morning. You've got Nick Saban, hasn't given up that spot at the Regions, and then Kalen DeBoer, who, thanks to our Charlie Potter, the intrepid one, Charlie Potter, out there at Greystone this morning, he just tweeted out or X'd out, whatever it is, some video of Kalen DeBoer loosening up for his round. And lo and behold, Tim Watts, it looks like Kalen DeBoer is team cargo shorts too.
I kind of knew that, right? I knew that, like, you're in Seattle, you want comfort, you're walking around, going to a Pearl Jam concert.
Yeah.
Got to keep your gummies somewhere, right?
I
mean, you need those
edibles.
pockets come. I'm telling you, it's going to take over. You're going to be the one standing there with a bunch of 20-something-year-olds not wearing them.
And I keep taking L's on the cargo shorts because, I'm a Dead and Company fan, and there's John Mayer, there's Bobby Weir wearing cargos on stage. It just seems like it's one L after another for Team Cargo, anti-cargo from that perspective.
They're always coming back. That's the thing. They might be briefly not in, but they're coming back.
Yeah.
You just got to consistently sit with them.
Timeless with the cargos.
Still one of the best movie lines was the dude's wearing cargo shorts, and he said, "We're not in Nam anymore." That was a Jonah guy, I think, said that, which was hilarious.
Oh,
in a movie.
Keith Griner checking in with a big roll tide, and of course our pal Bob doesn't miss a show. Bob's always there for us. He is a staple of the programs here on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. But yeah, you got Kalen DeBoer out there at the Regions. You got Nick Saban out there at the Regions. Of course, Kirby Smart is out there, Georgia head coach.
So what do you do if Nick Saban shows up in cargo shorts one day?
Oh, I'm done.
It's over, right?
I still have the GOAT. I still have the GOAT, I still have him in my corner.
So what was this event for?
It's the annual Regions tradition. It's part of the PGA Tour Champions Tour, the senior tour, so to speak, that they have every year on that tour. And it's always a big deal for the Celebrity Pro-Am on Wednesdays. I seem to recall it being a bigger field of celebrities maybe in some past years, but still a lot of star power. You've got some former Alabama stars and Greg McElroy, Roman Harper playing, Charles Barkley playing in that same group with those guys coming up this morning. So it's always a lot of fun. Always kind of a who's who event in the Birmingham area for the Regions tradition, a major championship on the PGA Tour Champions. So we note that as we move into the program here on a Wednesday. And what we also want to talk about, Tim, from a football perspective, seeing those early football lines for the 2024 season and as they relate to the Alabama Crimson Tide, as far as marquee games are concerned. All right. What we're going to talk about is the Wisconsins on the schedule and some of the premier SEC games on the schedule. And with that, what we'll do, and by the way, Tim, we need a BOL group. Can you make that work for the Pro-Am out there at the Regions tradition? Maybe get us a BOL group that plays in that event, get me, you. I don't know who else on our staff really even tries to play golf. I think Bone does.
I don't know if he plays, but Andrew will lie about playing. He'll definitely go.
Yeah.
He'll go chop it up. Andrew's not missing that. I can tell you right now. Joseph probably thinks he's he probably thinks he's won one amateur tournament from the Masters personally.
Yeah, and maybe you could get John Daly as our pro for our group, because they
Oh,
match up
John,
one of the pros with the groups. So
John would
maybe
be a good one. John
Daily
would
would
be a
probably be
good
good
one.
for our group. Yeah, and that would maybe ensure that we have some people at least that follow our group. And by the way, if you followed the BOL group, I would strongly encourage headgear, maybe a mouthpiece, face mask for the stray shots that would probably be headed your way. But talking about these opening lines for marquee games in the 2024 college football season, and these are coming from DraftKings, Tim. And what we'll do is we'll start with Wisconsin on the road, week 2 for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama in week 1, the debut of Kalen DeBoer will come against the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky in Tuscaloosa. But that trip to Camp Randall to Madison, Wisconsin, Alabama, 7.5-point road favorite right now with the Badgers. And Wisconsin, interesting because you've got some storylines already. Tyler Van Dyke now at quarterback for Wisconsin, previously of Miami. And of course, a year or so ago, there was a lot of talk about Tyler Van Dyke potentially being involved with Alabama as a transfer. And then you have Colin Hitchler working with that Alabama secondary coming from Wisconsin previously. So how does that go at Wisconsin week 2?
I think kind of strikes me is that we just don't know yet what Alabama's going to be. I haven't did a deep dive into Wisconsin. I think that's probably about right. I mean, that's a pretty respectful line to go to at Wisconsin with the new coaching staff, with the turnover on the team. Like I said, I haven't dug deep into Wisconsin. I'm not as familiar with them. I like Bama though. I like Bama to score a lot of points. I always feel that way. I felt that way against Michigan. It didn't work out. Their defense is better than I thought, but I always like the SEC speed when it matches up with some of the teams up north. I feel like there's usually an advantage, and that's why I picked Alabama over Michigan to begin with. But most teams aren't going to be as good defensively as that Michigan team was last year either.
Yeah, I like Alabama pretty good laying the 7.5 here to cover that. And for some of the reasons you outlined, I like that the game is in September. I mean,
Heck yeah.
that's going to feel like late October to the Alabama team, and you're not playing Wisconsin in the elements up there. And so, yeah, I think that's a favorable week 2 matchup. I know some folks don't like it before taking on Georgia, but you're going to have the bye week before you see the Dogs anyway. And speaking of the Georgia Bulldogs, Tim, Alabama right now on its home field, a 4.5-point underdog to Kirby Smart's team. This is an interesting line, Tim, because especially with Alabama's roster that it appears it's going to take into next season, I can't imagine Nick Saban being a 4.5-point underdog to Georgia on the home turf there at Bryant-Denny Stadium. This is where I really start to get the sense that Saban effect that we've seen in previous years where lines are concerned, not so much in play moving forward with Kalen DeBoer, at least not early on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad line. I mean, you got Georgia, who's probably a win against Alabama from likely three-peating, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. I think they'd have probably been the best of those four teams and had a chance. Coming in, they got their quarterback back. Beck. I don't know if
Yeah,
that sounds
Beck's
right.
back.
They
Yeah.
got Beck. Beck is back, so that's obviously good. They got some good portal guys. Always recruit well. I think 4.5 is probably, again, saying we're not sure on that. I think it's not a bad matchup, but I do think that in that situation, I would take Alabama with the points. I mean, I think everybody knows what that game means. Home field advantage can mean so much. And Alabama's done well against Georgia. Traditionally, Alabama's done well against Georgia, but obviously Georgia's coming in the number one team in the country. I think for many, they're my number one team anyway. So having that game so early, um, absolutely is one of the reasons I love college sports. Absolutely, that game being having the Super Bowl in October is absolutely why I love sports.
Yeah, Alabama hasn't lost an on-campus game, hasn't lost many games to Georgia really since 2007 in that overtime affair in year 1 under Nick Saban with Mark Richt at the time coaching Georgia in that one. Matthew Stafford at quarterback. Of course, Alabama paid it back in Athens the following season with the blackout game there at Sanford Stadium. But this would be, should Georgia win, the first on-campus win versus Alabama since 2007. And I think too, and it's very early. These are very early lines. Vegas trying to generate some early interest. I do think though Vegas without Saban on the sideline is telling you they're far more comfortable, or it is far more comfortable in thinking it will still get plenty of money on UGA, even as a 4.5 point early road favorite. The next line we'll look at, Tim, Alabama -2 at Tennessee. That's an interesting line. Last time Alabama went to Knoxville, took a close loss in a high scoring affair. I don't know if I like Alabama -2, Tim, but if you could give me maybe that over under the total points that Vegas might see for this game, or put in install for this game, I might like the over in this game more than I even like Alabama -2.
What was Bama the year they lost? They were -7. Does that sound right?
It's something like that.
Roughly
Yeah.
a touchdown. I actually expected Tennessee to be favored in this game. I do think it's a fair line. I do think that it was going to hover right around between 1 or 2 either way. Also, these games are going to adjust a lot, especially for Bama. Bama's line is going to adjust. I remember one of my most successful betting times ever was when I was on Mahomes and the Chiefs, their first Super Bowl, and they were just throwing money. And the Chiefs were dogs, like they were like dogs or low favorites till about week 7 or 8. I don't think college football takes that long because there's less games, but Alabama's going to be, they could be a 1.5 point favorite at Georgia, or they could be an 8.5 point dog, depending on Wisconsin. They're going to change that. They're going to change that a pretty good bit. And by Tennessee, I think we're certainly going to see that line move one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, you better be really, really certain of how you see a game if you're going to go ahead and get down in, say, early May for a game in late October. Absolutely. That's one of those games, as you said, how things sort of play out between now and then could impact that number greatly. But what we know right now, obviously, for Tennessee, high expectations for that Josh Heupel offense with Nico Amaliva stepping in there at the quarterback position. The Vols lose some firepower. I really like Jalen Wright at the running back position. And I'm kind of with you. I actually thought this game and LSU could have been flipped as far as early lines. Now, they're pretty close, relatively speaking, as we'll get down the road here in just a little bit to LSU. But I could see those games sort of on the road, especially going either way. Alabama in October also takes on the Missouri Tigers, a surprising Mizzou team from a year ago. Cotton Bowl champs, Tim Watts, took out the Ohio State Buckeyes in that bowl game. Brady Cook back at quarterback for Missouri. Luther Burden, familiar name. He was involved with Alabama during his recruitment, I believe. The wide receiver. Defensive coordinator change at Missouri. And that's the biggest improvement maybe Mizzou has made over the last couple of years. You got a couple of key corners gone. And when I think about Mizzou, I kind of think Ole Miss, whenever expectations are elevated, it hasn't always worked out for a team like Missouri. So as I sit here right now, I kind of like Alabama laying that 8.5 against Missouri at home.
Yeah, I think Missouri's a tricky team because last year they had some games that were absolutely just beautiful to watch offensively. With dismantling Tennessee was just one of the craziest things I'd ever seen. A better defense than probably given credit for, but I would like Alabama there. I do think they're taking the right strides with their NIL. They're getting some of the right players. They're beating big time programs for guys, so they're going in the right direction. Still think they're a touch away from being, winning almost a double digit dog in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I think points could be a thing in this one because Eli Drinkwitz offensively, they're going to be good, especially with some of the pieces they bring back. Again, my bigger concerns for Missouri are on the defensive side of the ball, where they've got change to the coaching staff and also at some key spots on the back end. Hey, let's talk about LSU. The Tigers right now, early 1 point favorites at home over the Alabama Crimson Tide. I guess that doesn't come as a surprise, even with Daniels off to the NFL, even with Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. off to the NFL. This LSU team, when you talk about offensive lines in college football, should be among the very best. But, I have a little bit of a hard time. This is a classic I need to see more situation, especially with LSU, because that defense last year, Tim, was atrocious. And LSU had a couple of their top defensive linemen go in the first 3 or 4 rounds of the recently completed draft. I guess Bo Davis coming in from Texas, though, maybe provides some comfort. I'm sure it does, where that defensive line improvement is concerned.
Yeah, I mean LSU. I don't think you can sleep on how much firepower they lost. I mean, you're talking elite Brian Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. I mean, that was the best threesome in college football last year easily, which is saying a lot. We had Washington with a loaded roster as well, but I don't think you can replace that easily. I think it helps that you have good tackles. I think their left tackle is going to be a guy mentioned in mocks in the top
Will
10, which is
Campbell.
Will
Yeah.
Campbell. But they have to establish the running back, the running game, I think, against Alabama. And again, if Alabama's in a shootout, you kind of lean towards Kalen DeBoer because he's very, offensive minded. Uh, that's going to be his first thing. But I also don't think LSU is going to be. I think they'll have talent. It's just not going to be the same talent yet that they did. So the shootout probably favors Alabama. But again, I mean, it's at Baton Rouge. Again, Bama's done traditionally where not just with Nick Saban, Bama's done well in Baton Rouge overall. In fact, Franchione handed Saban quite the
He
loss back
did.
in the day. That
Yeah.
was a tongue lashing. I don't know what was said, but that was before social media. Whatever had Dennis Franchione, upset,
Yeah.
that had made the locker room. I can't even imagine what it would be now. But yeah, I like Bama. I still like Bama in that game. And again, you're right. That might be an LSU team that's firing on all cylinders. They might have replaced all that parts because we've seen that. We've seen Alabama replace unlimited talent and then come back in and just plug and play. So, but LSU's got a lot they have to pick up. And like you said, their defense was, porous at best.
No, I think LSU is going to be fine at quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier. It's going to be different. Obviously, he's not going to be as dynamic with his legs as Jaden Daniels was, but Nussmeier from the pocket, this is a guy that's been around a while now. Kyron Lacey stepping in there at the wide receiver position. Offensively, LSU is just going to continue to backfill
Yeah.
with quality guys. And again, on the defensive side, Bo Davis. This is an LSU program with Brian Kelly, really went to some other SEC schools and took some important pieces away from Missouri and away from Texas. So, revamped defensive staff should lead to improvement for the Tigers on that side of the ball. How about, Tim, Alabama? Speaking of Dennis Franchione, the last time Alabama traveled to Oklahoma, Fran was the head coach. It was 2002. Exciting game in Norman the last time Alabama went out there. Alabama right now as a road favorite by a 1.5 point margin over the Sooners. Think about OU, you think about Dylan Gabriel moving on to Oregon, but now you got Jackson Arnold, a former 5-star, stepping in there behind
I like
center.
him. He's
Yeah, I
good.
do too. I
Talented
guess
guy.
he is. He kind of reminds me of Nussmeier or even a Connor Wiegman of Texas A&M. But when you think about OU and offensive line concerns there for Arnold in play, and you're still kind of wondering, right? Is Brent Venables really the guy to take Oklahoma into the SEC? I guess we're going to learn a lot more about that by the time this game rolls around in what
This
should
is the
be a
year.
chilly
Yeah.
environment. Yeah.
This is the year. This is the kind of year that says, okay, he's our guy, or maybe, it's not hot seat time, but it's where they start pulling the seat out, getting it up on the podium for you. Um, so yeah, I don't know. You kind of see the Venables kind of reminds you a little bit of the guy coaching the Lions, right? That
Yeah.
defensive guy.
Dan Campbell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we used to call them like meatheads, but I think they're definitely, you know what I mean? I think people would say that because they're like run through the wall guys.
Mario Cristobal kind of
Yeah,
fits
yeah,
that.
yeah. Those kind of guys, they're that kind of like they'll fight you. They'll rip their shirt off and fight their players if they need to. I think Venables has that in him. I think they're going to fight hard, but can he muster up enough offense? That's going to be the thing. Does he know how to coach offense? Which is, I mean, that's the biggest question he's got.
Yeah, that's a bigger question with Jeff Levy moving on from Oklahoma as offensive coordinator to Mississippi State as the Bulldogs' new head coach. Chase Collins here in the comments says only 1.5 at Oklahoma surprises me. That's a little lower than I would have thought too. Understanding it is early May, and Vegas is going to put some kind of line out there, but that game's so deep into the season too, right? So many things can happen. That's a weather game potentially for Alabama. Late November, and
Yeah.
Norman can be a handful. So some things coming into play there, I believe, that are impacting that situation as well. And then we had the Iron Bowl, Tim. If I told you going into year 2, a few
Bama's a
threes.
3. How big's a dog is Bama? Because my Auburn guys have told me,
Oh,
they have told me
they can't
they have
happy
told
with this.
me an ass whooping's coming. And
Oh,
it's coming from the
in
plains.
baseball in a couple weekends.
I mean, they're 4-20, I think. I don't think I don't think the baseball
Well, I
team
mean,
is the one to equestrian. I don't know
well,
what
yeah, that's a given. I mean, everybody's taking one from Auburn in equestrian.
someone's got to explain. Like,
The real dynasty.
do the horses get NIL money
Yeah.
with the equestrian? So what is Bama?
Bama is a 15-point early home favorite over the Auburn Tigers for the 2024 Iron Bowl. And that
Interesting.
number, AU fans, even though it's just a number, because I'm sure they weren't anticipating if you said, look, Nick Saban's going to retire going into year 2 if Hugh Freeze. Hugh's going to get this thing right. That bowl loss, though, in Nashville was an abomination. But here the Tigers are. Peyton Thorne back at quarterback, bringing in some real talent on the outside. We know that.
I
Most
got
recently, Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State transferring to Auburn. But Auburn's still a 15-point road
They're
dog.
going to have wide receivers. They're going to
Yeah.
have Cam, the
Cam
prep
Coleman,
guy. Yeah, Cam. He's going to be a legitimate guy.
big
One of the
time
best.
player. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the best wide receiver classes. I mean, when you're talking whether Ryan Williams is 1, 2, 3, or 4, as good as we think Ryan is, and it was a legitimate debate with Jeremiah Smith, who went to Ohio State, some other guys. That's how great the class. They're going to have wide receivers, but how are they going to get them the ball? Are they going to be able to establish the run, which I still think is important for Hugh Freeze? I still think the running, Lane's teams are better too when he runs, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think all teams are better, but I think more so than anything, when you can keep them guessing, I think that matters. 15 might seem, I mean, that's about right. I was thinking 13 range, probably close to 2 touchdowns. And again, that one's got all the time in the world to change.
I'm with you too, though, on the Auburn run game. I think the expectation is that that's really where it's going to start. And then to have the improvement that Auburn should have on the outside. If Peyton Thorne is the guy for this system, this should be the year that we see it. I'm not anticipating sort of a Joe Burrow from 2018 to 2019 situation for Peyton Thorne, but
He'll have a
unlike
better
O'Leary,
chance
though,
because his
yeah,
skill guys,
are going to
so
be
if
way
he's going to
better.
ever have a chance, I mean, you're going to have the guys you need, at least at wideout. But I mean, there's still a lot of questions to answer for Auburn on the offensive line.
JT83 checking in here says, like almost every Iron Bowl, Bama usually wins big at home, and the game is ultra tight
It's
in
true. Yeah.
Auburn. Averages, I think Vegas knows that too, and
Yeah.
whatever relevance it has, because teams change, and especially in this era on an annual basis, it is what it is over the course of time. Trends definitely come into account, no doubt about that, JT83. But I mean, when you look at Auburn, just, I did a little research. Auburn is a home dog to Oklahoma, a 24-point dog at Georgia, Tim, a 10-point dog at Missouri, and a 3.5-point home dog to A&M. So the 5 marquee games that I saw from DraftKings with these early lines, Auburn and underdog in all 5 of those games, including a couple of them by 10. Well, actually 3 of them by 10 or more. So still a lot to play out on the football field. So take it for what it's worth. Hey, you got some bonus options here too, Tim. I'm going to throw at you. Jalen Milroe, in terms of the Heisman Trophy, currently sits at plus 1,400. That's 4th behind Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, and Dylan Gabriel. Does that sound about right to you at this point?
What's the leader? What's the favorite? What's he?
Quinn's currently Quinn and Carson Beck.
What are
right
they
there
plus?
at the top. Guy, I want to say 900.
Yeah. See, I was about to say there's not. I mean, this is literally a time where if there's a field among quarterbacks, you can bet the field because those four guys all have the opportunity to win it, but none are even close. I mean, this is not a situation where, and I know Caleb Williams didn't win the Heisman, but he certainly had the resume to win it coming in. I don't think any of these other guys did. I mean, Caleb had won it. Other guys had that were in the discussion had already proven. I think all these guys that you mentioned have have something to prove, right? I mean, every
Mhm.
one of them. Carson Beck's kind of seen he's had a similar career almost to AJ McCarron, where they're so good they kind of like call him a game manager. When he's obviously, AJ was better than that, and Carson Beck's better than that as well. But that's kind of what he's viewed as. Quinn Ewers, I mean, I think that if they benched him for Arch Manning today, I think they would rejoice. There'd be more people happy than upset. And of course, Jalen Milroe. We know what Jalen is. We know what he does the best. We know what his best moments are, and they're fantastic. And we know where he's got to work on. And he's going to have 8 months, with Nick Sheridan. He's going to have 8 months with Kalen DeBoer and working with these guys. And to me, a kind of, an upgraded wide receiver room. I think that you add Jeremy Bernard and you add Ryan Williams, just those two alone upgrade what you had last year as far as route running and basically being a professional receiver because they take so much pride in their routes and their hands and everything they do. So I think they're definitely upgraded at the receiver position. And the offense, you got to give credit to the offensive line. I was about to skip that. That went from a C maybe to a possible A. You
I
know.
think Jalen of these five guys has the potential also to be more of the Jaden Daniels type of splash player. Quinn Ewers isn't going to make Heisman plays with his legs, right? Carson Beck, same thing. Dylan Gabriel, same thing. So of these 4 or 5 guys, when I think about the potential for Jalen to not only do it through the air, but also with his legs, and sort of have those shining moments, those dynamic plays that we saw so much from Daniels a year ago, that could really help him in a race if it
And
comes
that's
down to
what
those 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, and to me, that's what separated Jaden Daniels. Because I mean, if you
Mhm.
throw a pass, it's a lot of people involved, pass protection, a wide receiver. But when you run, especially the way Jalen and Jaden ran, I mean, it's just you. A lot of times you're running through it all, you're running through a defensive line, beating guys in the secondary. So and those plays stand out. And let's be honest, the Heisman winners aren't sitting down breaking down game film every week. They're watching the same overreaction on Twitter and the social media for a lot of it, the highlights. And highlights, if a quarterback tucks and runs 62 yards, that's always going to be in the highlight.
Top
You
10
know what I mean?
Sports
It's
Center
always
play
going
of
to
the day.
be, yeah, just
Absolutely.
every 11-yard pass or 22-yard threading the needle is not going to be seen, but every long run, it's going to be, it's almost like a dunk in the NBA.
Yeah, I like the value right now with Jalen at
Yeah.
plus 1400. Speaking of plus 1400, that's where Alabama sits in terms of odds to win the national championship for the upcoming season. That's tied for fifth, Tim, behind Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. The Crimson Tide tied with LSU in that slot at plus 1400. Regular season wins for Alabama. 9.5 is your over under. And the current money looks
9.5.
like it is more so, Tim, on under the 9.5. So maybe
I mean,
9-3, something like that.
that schedule is unbelievable. I mean, that's a schedule. It doesn't matter who's coaching or what roster you have. That is a schedule. When you look at the road games, you mixing in new teams, everything you're going with. I can see 3 losses. Um, Another reason that Iron Bowl could mean everything, too, if you're not in the 12-team playoffs. But also, Bama loses the right 3 teams, they might still be under consideration because if you have 3 losses and they're all the teams in the playoffs, I think that's going to factor in. I mean, 12 is a lot of teams to try to figure out who's actually good.
Yeah, it is, no doubt about that. And you know what else is going to be good? How about Bama hoops in this latest news, Tim, with the scheduling offering that Nate Oates is once again going to offer up for one of his teams, and Viva Las Vegas for Bama hoops, as it appears, according to CBS Sports. The Crimson Tide will participate in a groundbreaking event, the Players Era Festival, Thanksgiving week coming up in late November, and an event Tim, that will include a $1 million payout for the 8 participating schools. According to CBS Sports, the Crimson Tide is one of those, along with Houston, Notre Dame, Oregon, Rutgers, San Diego State, and Texas A&M. Boy, if you're Yay, Alabama, you have to like that setup with the $1 million payout. And that's just to start. I believe there's going to be even more funds available
I thought the
depending on
winner.
where you finish. Yeah, you
I
win it,
thought
you
the
get
winner.
another million.
Yeah, I thought the winners got a little boost there.
Uh-huh.
That'll be an interesting game. I wouldn't mind seeing Bama Rutgers. Rutgers signed, I think, 2 McDonald's All-Americans or 2 5-stars. Obviously, Cliff's coming from Rutgers to Alabama. That'd be a good matchup. I'd be excited. I mean, I even like the name of it. It sounds like it's the right name for us to go to Vegas. I might have to dust off my Vegas cargos.
Oh,
Um,
the
Dude,
special ones.
you remember when I was running Rivals Hoops with me and the 2-man band, me and Travis Reier. Travis would have months where I was like on the road with hoops. Luckily, the calendar was different, so I didn't put old Trav to too much
Yeah.
trouble. But we did. We did. Old Travis had to man the fort till I got to the hotel when Mike Price got fired while I was driving. That was back in the days that the texts were like come through like the wire.
Yeah.
What's he thinking? That was
Well,
the
we had
first
that
yeah.
Nextel messaging,
Well,
thing.
I
Beep, beep.
finally was like, "What are they talking about?" And he said, "Price fired." And I said, "What? Like, what the hell what's he talking about?" I pulled over and said, "What?" They said he got fired, and then the story. I'm
Mhm.
like, "Are you messing with me?" Like the whole like don't tell me this is the whole story. But yeah, this haven't been to Vegas since back in those. Oh, I took Heather once. So we did go to we did go to Vegas one time. So maybe we have to dust them off and go. Me and
Catch that
Tim
catch
and
that
Travis.
nonstop to Vegas. Yeah, let's do it. I'm down, man. You let me know. Um, we'll
Absolutely.
work the Iron Bowl into that too somehow from Vegas,
We can't take Joseph. There's no way
No,
he doesn't
no,
end up
he's
on
too
the
pure.
roof.
Joseph, yeah, it would be like The Hangover, right?
Joseph
If we
Joseph
took
would be the guy
Joseph,
taking all those things they hand to
Joe
you.
would come back without a tooth, you know?
Yeah. Joseph would be that guy taking all those things they hand you, 2 for 1 for
No,
$20.
we
Joseph would
can't.
be grabbing them all, collecting
We
them.
can't corrupt young
We
Joseph
can't
like
do that to
that. We can't
Joseph.
do that to him. We got to keep him pure as the driven
But
snow
that'd
on a
be a heck. I
convent
mean, you're
roof.
talking the Bama hits just have kept coming.
Mhm.
Um, from the Final Four, from the Sweet 16 on, beating a number 1 seed. It has been nothing but positive vibes from whether it was recruiting, whether it was coaching. Um, there's been so much going on we haven't really even discussed. And I think it's still in the beginning phases who the other assistant coach is going to be.
Yeah.
There's been so much going on because recruiting's going on, the news they're traveling to Vegas, you know, the whole shebang.
Have you already been hit with this one, by the way? How is Nate going to keep this loaded roster, assuming
Yeah,
Mark
oh
Sears is
yeah.
a part? How many times
Yeah.
already have you been hit with that? How's he going to keep all these guys happy, Tim Watt?
There's not I agree, it's a question, but
Yeah.
the one thing about it I feel comfortable with when you have a coach, like Nate Oates, and there's other ones. I'm obviously using the Alabama example, but I think Nate Oates can stand in the pocket with his decisions. I think that's the one thing about him is he wants to win. So there's no politics being
No,
played.
he
I
will go
wanna
to the
win.
bench. Yeah.
Is this the place for you? Because this is how we do things. Um, so I feel confident that he can make that decision. There's no doubt he's going to have, there's scenarios. You can lay out almost any scenario to me, honestly. You could lay out almost any scenario to me, and I could say that's a good lineup.
Yeah.
The only thing you could do is go with 5 guards, and I'm not even sure 5 guards is a terrible lineup. And I
And if there
still think,
and
I
if
still
there's a
think they'll get you.
tiebreaker, it's going to go back to defense every
Yeah,
time. That's what some of these guys, if they haven't already realized it, that's what they're going to figure out too, right?
yeah, and I tell you, I think it helps. I mean, I think seeing the defense does matter. You saw it in their run to get to the Final Four. And you see it in the NBA playoffs. I think when you watch those things, if you're watching the NBA, you're seeing the playoffs. If you're watching the Final Four team, you're seeing playoff. If you saw UConn, they're playing defense. So I think that you're going to play defense if you get out here. It's great you can shoot, but look at my bench.
Yeah. I got a lot of
Everybody
guys that can do that.
everybody basically can shoot.
I think that's the real luxury that Nate's going to have with all this is that regardless, he should be able to put his best total lineup on the floor on a consistent basis when you
And it might
mix
be different. It might be
offense and
different.
defense.
Yeah, it might be different night in and night out. I think that he could look for matchup problems. We saw him make adjustments during the year. Ryland was coming off the bench all of a sudden. We saw a different rotation. Just the NCAA tournament alone saw how many guys come out of the blue to have a game basically of their lifetime to help Alabama get to that Final Four. I mean, we saw Jaron, we saw Mo, just out of the blue. Grant at the time just broke out in a big kind of way. So I think you're going to see more of that. Sometimes it's just going to be a certain player's night, um, kind of from the role players. But if a guy like Mark Sears is back, it's going to be his night every night.
Going to
He's
get his
just that
20. Yeah.
he's just that good. But from the players on the bench, I think rotating in and all that stuff's gonna be a big deal.
Tim, let's switch it back to some football talk. There has obviously been a lot of focus on the transfer portal, most recently as it relates to imports for Kalen DeBoer and his program. I know we have been all over it. You have been all over it with us at BamaOnLine.com. There have been some twists in the road, so to speak, I guess you could say, including some here very recently. So, going to just throw it to you and ask you to give us what we know right now on a Wednesday mid morning as it relates to some potential additions to this Alabama football roster.
I know I'm a little irritated with Deshaun Jones. I can tell you that the Wake Forest portal, who's been expected to announce his commitment to Alabama this entire week. This morning, before we went on the air, Deshaun tweeted, "Recruitment's still open." And then he deleted the tweet, which makes it, for me, somehow it makes it even worse that it's deleted. That tells me it wasn't necessary. But when you get these guys and look, when you're in the portal, I don't think the portal necessarily ends. I think teams will still go after you. I don't think there's any honor among people looking in the portal. I don't know exactly what's happening with Deshaun Jones other than he deleted the tweet, but Alabama canceled a visit with Kobe Minor, the defensive back from Indiana, when Deshaun committed, and it's our understanding that he's did all the paperwork and everything necessary to go to Alabama. So again, the drama that goes with this, and we saw that with Woods last week, and we saw guys taking visits. These things happen a lot. I mean, these things are going to happen, and they happen fast. Where you have a kid expected to visit on Friday, and another school swoops in on Thursday, and gets him signed and sealed and delivered. And so these things, I mean, this portal, Courtney Morgan, I think, does a big job, has a big hand in the portal, along with all the coaches. They've got their work cut out for them because there's so much going on and so much happening. But I feel like Alabama's done a good job. They're still waiting on Andrew Bone had a really good nugget this week on Geno Vandemark. We predicted him to come to Alabama. He's the Michigan State offensive lineman, and King Mack from Penn State hasn't committed yet, but we feel like Alabama's done a really good job there. So really, you're trying to just like check these boxes. I'm hoping this stuff's done by Friday with me going on a trip. So I'm
Espanol.
hoping.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was like, Cliff, get the ball rolling. Cliff hit on all cylinders and ended one for us. And then you get to football, you're like, let's go, Deshaun. Good job, buddy. And then boom, you're still waiting, 3 or 4 days later to do it. But the portal, I mean, it's not just hard for the coach, it's hard for the players because they've got a lot of pressure. They're being told a lot of things. And look, if you got 1 year left, you can't afford to miss on your opportunity. So there's a ton of pressure for these players too. So I don't fault any of them.
I don't either. And it really seems like the guys that are out there in the April portal that are of value are probably doing better for themselves in NIL than if they had come out in January because there's not as many guys, true guys. I'm talking about legitimate guys. Um, but the value of these guys seems to have doubled since January, if what I'm hearing about some of them is accurate, not so
We
much related to Alabama, but there are some mid-level defensive linemen out there that I've heard about, Tim. They're getting seven figures here in the
this
April
goes
portal. It's
this goes
crazy.
back to this goes
Good for
back to
them,
the
but it's crazy.
this goes back to the old basketball. I've told you that story before. I knew a kid. He had a Southern Miss offer. He says, I'm better than that. It was literally his only offer. So he waited in the late period. He ended up with like could, I want to say, ended up at North Carolina. But he had North Carolina, Kentucky, several big time offers because the field shrunk. The
Yeah,
field shrunk, and when the field shrunk's the best,
the
you got a
value
top
increases.
if you have a top 250 ranking and 220 signed, well, when you wipe them off the board, you've got a top 30 all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got all the schools fighting for those 30 instead of the 250. So I think that's one thing that has helped them, especially as a talent, if you're actually got talent and contribute. But I think there's also going to be a lot of guys who probably have seen their last year of football based on a lot of, and basketball too. I mean, the numbers, I've seen the number of people in the portal, and it has not matched the number of people in the
No,
portal who signed.
absolutely. I agree, and again, from what I've heard in some instances, um, there's guys that probably were mid six figures back in January. They're over seven here late. It's been pretty amazing to see play out. Hey Tim, let's get into the round table mailbag. One of our favorites. We
Let's
always
do it.
appreciate our viewers and subscribers, certainly at BamaOnLine.com for contributing to that. If you haven't, by the way, subscribed to our YouTube channel as of yet, do that right now for us. If you would, hit that subscribe button, hit a like for us if you don't mind as well. Hit that notifications bell. That'll get you all of the content here on YouTube from BamaOnline.com as it drops. We would certainly appreciate all of those items if you would do those. We'll start with Darth Crimson, who, timely enough, um, who asked, when is the Jones commitment coming? We just kind of addressed that with Tim. We'll see on that one as we continue to move forward. Tide Hashira here in the roundtable mailbag. Who has the best offense that Alabama will face in 2024? And Tim, we talked about this with the spreads, with the marquee games, I'll tell you one right out the gate that's traditionally really good is Western Kentucky. So, do I think Western Kentucky is going to challenge Alabama for 4 quarters? No. But in terms of kind of a precursor to what Alabama is going to see throughout the season, that's not a bad way to start the season. Week 2, Wisconsin, even with Tyler Van Dyke in there, you got to think is going to want to try to keep this into a ground and pound situation. What do you think in terms of offenses? What's your expectation from that perspective?
I think the most dangerous might be Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Nico, got a lot of respect for Josh Heupel and the game he calls. Nico's a guy that can run and throw. They've invested a lot in him to get him to Tennessee. Built some guys around him. I think the most consistent, the one that's probably it's the most talent is going to be Georgia. I think Georgia's going to have offensive linemen. I think they'll have running back. They have a veteran quarterback. They'll have guys, the wideouts. Now they lost some guy. I mean, you lose Brock Bowers. The thing about losing Brock Bowers is that is the ultimate safety valve. Like in worst case scenarios, you can dial up a play for Brock Bowers pretty easily because he was so good. And also, we can't sleep on Lad McConkey being out. He was a guy kind of like a little wild card type player. So you have these guys coming in. So I think Georgia will be the biggest challenge, but I don't think they'll be as Heupel's going to dial it up. I think Georgia's just coming at you, calling their playbook and saying if you beat us, you're going to be better than us today.
Yeah, I think if you're an Alabama fan, you kind of look at this in terms of how the Alabama defense might match up with these offenses. I think Alabama's front seven matches up pretty well with Georgia and who Georgia is typically on the offensive side of the ball. I think that Alabama's defensive line, linebackers can hang in against that Georgia run game, which of course added Travis Etienne at the running back position. So that's a concern for Alabama and others for next season. I'm kind of with you too on Tennessee. Nico is a real wild card in terms of how he can throw it and he can also run it. You look at this guy, he kind of looks like a giraffe out there, but then he's making plays with his legs too. So he sort of presents those unknowns and those unaccounted for aspects of defense that you just have to kind of put up with. Those would probably be at the top of the list for me as well. Hey, let's get back into the mailbag. And Zach Franks 94 asks, would you rather win the first title in Alabama basketball history or Coach DeBoer win a title
Mm.
in the first year of his head coaching tenure?
I mean, I feel
You
like I
might
can't win with that,
you might get canceled. You'll get canceled either way on this one,
I
Tim.
mean, it's for me, it's basketball because they've never had one.
Yeah.
I also think that Kalen DeBoer's best teams will be his future teams when he's got his whole roster against him. I guess I'm so logical. I think the odds are longer for Kalen DeBoer to win it, considering his schedule. First of all, his schedule is brutal. Just to get to the playoffs is brutal. I don't know if I have a preference of which one I like. If you say which one would if I had to predict which one will win next year, I'd predict basketball. Also, with the caveat that basketball, I mean, we've discussed this. I don't know if there's a harder tournament to win than the NCAA basketball because one guy can get hot on one team and just absolutely carry his team to the next level. So, if I had to say who's more likely to do it, I'd say basketball. But I don't have a preference who actually does it.
Yeah, I would say basketball. Because it would be the first, obviously. And you look around the SEC, and it's not. I know there's this perception. Well, it's Kentucky and everybody else in basketball, and look, Kentucky is without question the standard bearer of Southeastern Conference basketball. But Alabama actually has a rich tradition in hoops, but it doesn't have a national championship. And Florida, for example, has a couple of national titles. So, this is something that you want for the athletic department, the university as a whole, and the fan base. Um, we haven't seen, I don't think, an Alabama football coach, at least in the modern era, win a national title in year one. And I'm on record as being on board with you in terms of difficulty of winning a national championship in basketball, college baseball, those type of things. Extremely difficult. It's going to be tougher for DeBoer in year one at Alabama because they're going to 12 teams. Now that increases your chances of getting in, but you're going to have to navigate more folks to get it done in football moving forward. Major Wood 482 here in the Round Table Mailbag. I don't know if it's been talked about on the board yet. It has, but have y'all caught Tom Brady's roast on Netflix? It's actually pretty damn good. I agree. I caught it kind of late Sunday night. I got caught up on it, Tim. Not sure if you've seen it as of yet, but yeah, I agree with
I saw a
Major
lot of
Wood.
the highlights. I'm not watching the whole thing. The misses.
It's
I
long.
watched. I
Yeah.
watched the highlights. I had. I think Gronk was absolutely murdered, worse than anybody else, and took it the
Low
best.
hanging fruit. Poor
But he
Rob.
liked it. He
Oh, he
liked it.
did.
You could
He knew
tell it.
why he was up there. Yeah.
You could tell he liked it. For the most part, I saw Brady walk up and tell the guy Jeff, what's his name, who I've seen live a couple times, to cool it on the Robert Kraft jokes. That was not a setup. He literally said, cut
You
it
could talk
out.
about my ex-wife and my kids,
That
but
was crazy.
Robert
That was
Kraft,
crazy. They
nope.
literally, that was crazy. You're right. They talked about your wife cheating, you deflating balls, your kids don't love you, but damn it, hold up.
Don't talk about Bobby.
We're not talking
No, no.
about that massage
You could
parlor.
talk
It'll
about
stop.
Bill too. You could talk about Bill
Dude,
too.
he let him talk about everybody, every one of
Yeah.
his teammates, every single one of them, but not Kraft. So
No, not Bob.
that was interesting to see.
My thing about roast, and I agree. I think the former teammates. I thought Bill Belichick was good. Rob Gronkowski was good. I thought Brady did a nice job closing it out. But when I watch a roast him, I watch it for the pros, and I'm
Yeah.
talking about the comedians.
Yeah.
I'll fast forward through Randy Moss. Sorry, that's just the way. I mean, I know I'm not going to get a great set. That's not what Randy Moss does for a living. But guys like Andrew Schultz
Oh,
and Tony Hitchcliffe, I don't know if you saw
dude.
their. I
Oh, he
mean,
was a
they were
friggin'
brutal.
he was like hit
If
him
you
up.
thought politically incorrect comedy and insult comedy was a thing in the past, it got
I mean, this
resuscitated
dude,
Sunday night
dude,
because
the Tony guy went in. George Floyd, Aaron
Nikki
Hernandez, he just
Glazer is an
yeah.
all timer. She is incredible up there. So those were probably my favorite roasters.
Schultz is the guy. Andrew Schultz is the guy I really like. I see a lot of his bits. He does really good, like talking about everybody. He did a good job. Kevin Hart was a good sport, but he
Yeah,
actually thought the show was about him. He was like
yeah,
standing up, doing cartwheels, and
yeah.
I did like when the girl said, Gronk, that is Kevin Hart sitting next to you, not your shadow. That's when I was like, oh man. They did. So I
Oh,
thought they did a good job, but I don't know I think the roast is better if he's not there. You know what I mean?
well, Yeah, it was kind of like redundant, I thought, because um, you already had Jeffrey Ross there, who is typically the guy that
Mhm.
will host those situations, but they loaded it
Yeah.
up with star power, no doubt
I've seen him
about that.
open for a few, and that's what he does. He comes out, he roasts you for a while, and then he leaves. I've seen him open for Chappelle a few years ago, and a few other times I've noticed him out there. But yeah, he just comes in, roasts you, and gets out.
Yeah, I
But
thought it
not
was
Robert Kraft.
no.
Not
I
Robert.
still think that maybe and I thought also Peyton Manning's really good in that setting.
Yeah, Peyton
He's
Manning's
as
good.
close to a pro as an athlete or coach can be in that. He's good. Peyton's good at that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Major Wood, pretty good, pretty fun, no limits.
Oh, well, there weren't. That's for sure. Hey, let's see. He also asked Major Wood 482, do you think with some of these portal safeties coming in, we could see more move back to the star spot, or as it's known right now these days anyway, the Husky? What we've heard from the defensive staff, I think, and even Kalen DeBoer, Major, is that looks like Malachi is going to play safety this year, regardless, back there with Keon Sabb. I wouldn't rule out the possibility because he does have so much experience there. And I'm sure it's something that they're keeping him in mind about. But that's where a guy like King Mack coming in, could help you as well. And they obviously felt good about Red Morgan, the early enrollee.
A lot
Um,
of good, yeah, a lot of good
Devontae
press. You know
Smith.
the
Yeah.
thing about Red, I mean, you might expect to hear that from our sources on the defensive side of the ball. That's not uncommon. But it's when the sources on the opposite side of the ball, the player they're talking about. And again, that goes back to like Amari Cooper. Like the people, I mean, I hear the offensive guys saying he was good, but it was the defensive guys talking about him. They were talking about how good he was. Same with Will Anderson. Offensive guys going, Will Anderson was literally like slowed down from the groups. Like, we can't see this guy get a good rep if it's against you. And that happens all the time. It's like, no, we know he can't stop you. Let's see if he can stop a normal human being. Jan Pierre was that way. So, yeah, hearing that with Red from the offensive guys tells me he's really had an impact.
Reed W. Taylor here in the mailbag, Tim. Could you see Alabama signing a top two football recruiting class
Top two.
for the
Mm,
2025 cycle? Can you
eh,
see it, Tim?
probably not. I don't think so because it's going to be hard to get that elite type quarterback. It's not a great quarterback year. All the top guys are gone. Ohio State's really going to be aggressive. I feel Georgia's going to have a lot of momentum. Top five, possibly. Top 10 for sure. Top two might be hard to do. But again, it depends on who they call. It's going to start with their quarterback. That's going to be because you're talking about rankings and the people that follow the quarterback. So who they get at quarterback could be big. I don't feel the staff's as worried about prep quarterbacks as the fans are. I think they understand they can go in the portal and get guys, and it's just a new day. When it comes to quarterback, I think it's just a new day and age. Again, you pay a guy a hefty NIL, and he doesn't play his freshman year. You've literally thrown that money away that you could have used. So I think top five is doable. I think they're number 6 right now. Top two might be hard this year. But the overall, I mean, you got to give them credit for getting back in the game with so many guys, and certainly have a chance to finish strong.
BW Thurber here in the roundtable mailbag. When was the last time the men's basketball team was ranked ahead of the football team in the preseason? Well, I got to think we got to go
Long night.
back to maybe the Godfrey era, right? Maybe remember Godfrey had them number one in like 2005, late that year, and then they immediately sort of fell off the face of the earth. I think that was after the Elite Eight appearance in 2004, maybe 2004, 2005. That's what comes to mind anyway, without just going way under the surface. But the point is, here's the thing though. I mean, you're talking about the basketball team and the football team potentially being top five in a preseason together. That's probably the way I would view it and say that's pretty crazy when you're in that situation. Tim, Slip and Jimmy here in the roundtable mailbag. What couple of position groups will improve the most from the Saban tenure to the DeBoer tenure? And I guess you automatically look to the offensive side, Tim.
Yeah, I think offensive line perhaps, but really, if I had to vote, I'd probably go wide receivers. I think what Shep does, I believe in what that he has a type that he recruits. See the offers and the guys he's bringing in. We've seen the output at Washington of what they developed. and guys they put in the NFL so far. So I would go with the wide receiver because offensive line wasn't bad at Alabama, but I do think Alabama offensive line will improve.
Yeah, that's going to be an area. Offense is the easy sort of expectation. You kind of look at quarterback and think, oh, quarterback, but it's not like Nick Saban had, you know,
Yeah.
grunts at the quarterback
Nah,
position. He
not at all.
had a couple of guys, that were pretty unbelievable. Bryce Young, Mac Jones, Jalen, Tua. You can go down the list. I think there's this perception that it was kind of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense under Nick. And early on in his tenure, it was, but they became much more
Absolutely.
explosive later in the Saban era. Also, Slip and Jimmy, what couple of position groups will decline the most from the Saban tenure to the DeBoer tenure? And Tim, I think it's another one that's obvious because how Saban had his hands on a particular area of this Alabama team during his time. I mean, you've already seen it probably in some of the attrition on the back end of the defense when I think the secondary.
Yeah. I wonder about running back. And it's partly,
Yeah.
I mean, what Saban did at running back during it. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, you go back to the guys we've forgotten about. So many NFL guys. Also, the game has changed. We're seeing smaller running backs versus the bigger ones that we were used to. Plus, just the way the offenses ran. I just think you're going to see a little bit more pass, a little bit more run. So I just think the bar at running back was so high under Nick Saban. I just don't know how you could hit that bar again. Because again, if you pull it up, you ever pull up running backs drafted by the NFL from Alabama, the list is absurd. And I guarantee you there's three guys you'd forgot off the top of your head.
Yeah. Eddie Lacy, guys like that. I agree. I think this year will be interesting position and its recruitment moving forward because you got a couple of three real dudes right now, right? Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Richard Young, very impressive in the spring. You're adding to that mix. Uh, Again, perception sometimes can be reality. We'll see, but I think that's a good one if you're going to go on the offensive side of the ball, no doubt about it. Z Boy here in the mailbag, Tim, says a lot was said about Saban's ability to get recruits to camp. Courtney Morgan has referenced this and has said he would like to continue to make this a priority. Any indication on how the new staff is doing on that front going into camp season?
I think they're doing fine. I think they we've addressed this in the past as far as you felt like they were behind. I think they felt like they were behind, and they probably were behind, but they worked so hard during spring that at some point I felt like they were ahead. They were basically out of guys to come visit who hadn't visited. They brought so many guys in. But yeah, they're going to be the camps are going to be their focus as well. I don't know any college coach that it's not important to. We always talked about it with Saban because so many offers went out with Saban. With this staff, I mean, they're playing catch up from the degree of seeing people live, but they are out on the spring. They are getting looks at guys. We've seen them hit, going out to practices and all that kind of stuff. So they're getting live looks, but they'll do fine. I mean, they'll get guys into camp. I mean, Alabama was this, every school wants to get them into camp in June. It's a little bit crowded because of the official visitors and everything else that's happening too. But yeah, I feel like they're doing a good job.
Yeah, that seems to be the indication you get from our coverage there at BamaOnLine.com, and that's a big reason why you want to be a part of the roundtable and our website, BamaOnline.com. Tim Watts, Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, none better, none close to that trio when it comes to recruiting coverage and everything else that we offer there. Big Bama boy here in the roundtable mailbag, Tim, asked for, he says, give us your two deep OL with the thought that Bama gets the transfer, Geno Vandermark, from Michigan State. So what we saw, at least on A Day, Elijah Pritchett, left tackle, Tyler Booker, left guard, the departed James Brockermeyer at center. So I'm going Parker Brailsford in that mix with the ones as the starting center. The Washington transfer, Jaden Roberts at right guard, and then Wilkin Formby at right tackle. Second team, that's where it gets interesting. Niquel Bertrand. Although, again, Caden Proctor coming in, so I like him as the starting left tackle. And Elijah Pritchett perhaps goes to the right side and competes with Wilkin Formby, or is he's your two along with Naquel Bertrand there at left tackle with the twos? And then you get into guys like Ola Salinen, perhaps at guard. You get into Vandemark at guard center, Rock Montgomery in that mix at guard. Joe Ionata, the true freshman we saw at center some with the twos in spring. And then right tackle, you could be thinking maybe Miles McVay. Those are some of the candidates, Tim. Fill in some blanks there if you have them.
I don't have them. I think you covered it pretty well. I think that going into this, I mean, I think there's some versatility. If you add Geno, I think that's a big add for guys with experience that can play different positions. Still just want to see what happens at right tackle. I think that's the most. You got Elijah, you got some of the younger guys out there that you're willing to step in. I mean, it's interesting how there's so many options, despite you're likely looking at 4 locked in starters. Going from Jaden Roberts across to Caden Proctor, filling in with Parker and Tyler Booker, which is absolutely huge. 4 guys basically with all conference honors and or some kind of All-American honors. But there are so many options to get to that 5th spot. And also you're looking at 8 guys you want to be able to run out there at any moment. Twisted ankle, a cleat comes off. I think we underappreciate the old cleat coming off. It takes a while to lace them. It takes a while to unlace them and get them back laced.
It does. And so just the return of Caden Proctor, just in terms of how we laid it out for you there, it shows you how impactful that is and how much it fortifies you, perhaps not just at one spot, but a couple of spots now where you go from maybe even from a depth perspective, thinking you're a little bit thin to thinking, you know what? We got some decent numbers here and some quality that we can continue to develop at the offensive tackle position. Bama 116 here in the mailbag. Just a real general question. How would you evaluate the level of this new coaching staff under KD? Everything is positive in March, April, May. Recruiting, I think they've answered some of those questions. There's still going to be some because you're not just following the greatest of all time in terms of just coaching, but recruiting as well. And Nick Saban. So you got to understand the bar that you're talking about that was established prior. But I don't know. It seems positive, Tim. I mean, we all know that the dividing line, the measuring stick doesn't come until September, late August.
Yeah, and I think that's all you can judge it on is where you're at right now and what they've done so far. And what they've done, they've did a good job with it. The stuff you're looking for, the boxes you want them to check. I mean, it started where with recruiting in the portal, where I think they've done a really good job. I think they've had a good consistent mix of keeping guys in there, guys that left. I don't think you've seen a whole lot of people begging and just, hey, if this isn't the spot for you, it's not the spot for you. So I think they did a good job. I mean, I know you always got the ones that are like, wait till this season. It's not just the season that matters. You got to have talent for the season. That's the dumbest thing ever. It's not, let's wait till the season. They've got to, coaching is more than the season. It's more than the season. Hell, if Nick Saban thought that, anybody's going to think it, but recruiting, the portal, the roster management, NIL, all that stuff, they did all those things. Pretty, how I know they've done them well? Because you've got so many fans of other schools saying they didn't do it well. You know what I mean? It's pretty obvious that, they did at least a good enough job because the laughter was loud and it's a lot quieter now. It's like that awkward comedian joke. You're like, we went from loud laughter to this. So they've definitely done a good job.
Yeah, from a roster perspective right now, it looks really good for Alabama during the upcoming season. And what we have to go on during that stretch with Kalen DeBoer, guy hasn't lost a lot of games once August and September have rolled around. Obviously, the SEC, Alabama, different deal, but we have what we have to go by. And right now, it looks pretty good.
That's a good point you made. It's not like this, this is his first year coaching football, and we got to figure out if he can coach. He's won everywhere he's went.
Yeah.
So do you think Alabama's as an Alabama fan, do you think Alabama is as elite as you probably claim? Because if you do, and he's a good coach, I feel like there could be some success there.
Whoa, bro, here in the mailbag. He wants to know, Tim, what time do you go to bed and what time do you wake up?
Whoa, bro.
Whoa, bro.
Bro's really getting into personal. I go to
Yeah.
bed late because I like West Coast sports. Watching the Dodgers last night, watching the Mavs OKC last night. I've always been a night owl. Before when I was single, I had extreme trouble getting to sleep. Even when I first got in this business before I had kids, I'd sleep till 11 a.m. I'd stay up till 4, 5 in the
Mhm.
morning. I need 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep, and I'm good. String together.
I gotta
But
have
I get up
6.
six
Yeah.
thirty. Yeah, I get up 6:30 ish or whatever.
I've transitioned to old man pretty much at this point. Boy, when we first started this stuff together with Tim, we were on the same clocks basically, I think, and we had young kids, and
Hmm.
so you get them down around 9 or 10, and then I would anyway. That was like, okay, now I can really go back to work. 10 o'clock to 3 or 4. That was pretty common. But now that the kids are older, I'm older, man, I can go out 11 o'clock pretty easy. But now I'm up at 5:30 guy. I'm up at 5:30 drinking coffee guy. So that's kind of the change I've made from that perspective. Tex Tider, our guy here in the Round Table Mailbag, Tim, he wants to know, when's the last time TW, JS, AB, CP, and JH were all in the same room ever? Question mark.
Have we? I don't think that hasn't happened.
I don't think so. No,
Well,
we haven't done like, yeah.
part of it is I was about to say I don't like most of these guys, but part of it, part of it is when we moved the website in June, all hell broke loose. I had arrived from Italy on the 31st. Midnight, we moved the site. Joseph was here for longer. Andrew was here 8 months later than Joseph. And then we all came. Jimmy was here. And then me, Travis, and Charlie Potter showed up. But all hell broke loose in June. We went straight to the commitments and the camps, and then August rolled around and you've got football. We haven't really had a damn break. Not that
Mm-mm.
we're not bricklayers, so we understand, this is more mental than physical, but we need to remedy this, but we have not been in the room together, in a long time. No, we've all been in Zooms and stuff together.
Yeah.
So Zooms have changed everything where you go from not, this is not a normal phone call that we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
You Zooms are more intimate, obviously. I mean, we get to see a little bit about each other and the conversations easier, facial expressions, but we do need to get some kind of BOL gathering at some point, maybe this summer. But again, we're still,
Yeah.
we're
It's
on
gonna
May.
be football season when we
Well, we're
wake up
May
tomorrow.
8th. We're,
Yeah.
it's May 8th. Joseph's got a trip he's taking. Andrew Bone has young kids. Travis likes to move around. I've got trips I'm taking. Charlie Potter hates us all. So I think getting Charlie in the room with us, we might have to kidnap Charlie, right?
Yeah.
Chloroform
Well,
back of the trunk.
getting Charlie up. Charlie's where Tim and I were, about 15 years ago, I think, when it comes to sleep skeds. And he's busy today. Charlie got up. Props to Charlie, because he is over in Birmingham, I think, for that region's tradition with Kalen DeBoer. So he does it when he needs to. Tex Tider says meet in Austin. Hey, I'm down.
I've never
I'm
been to
down.
Austin, and
Oh,
I absolutely need it's on the bucket list. And we were heading there.
go get me some barbecue.
Yeah, they
We will eat if we go to Austin, no doubt about it. Tex
I've
would
seen.
probably take us on the personal tour, though. He'd make sure we did it right.
Yeah, I need to go to Austin. I haven't been there. And our old buddy Hank South, who
Yep.
now covers Texas, he lives in Austin. He'd welcome us with open arms. Still a friend of the program. Still talk to Hank
Hank's
pretty
good people,
regular.
man. Good
Yeah,
dude.
just a good dude. Happy covering Texas, living in his alma mater, living in
Hmm.
Austin.
George Mardini here to wrap up the roundtable mailbag, Tim. Along those same lines, always curious where you guys live in relation to the Zooms, just for perspective, kind of like Brett and you are looking live. I don't know. Are you getting that? Is George asking where we live or where
Yeah,
we
I
originate
think he's
from?
asking like where we are now. Joseph and Travis are in Florida. Me and Andrew and Potter are in Birmingham. Jimmy's in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, we're a little bit of we're regional, but
Well, when you
we all
cover
have
you yeah, you don't really have a home base in this business because,
not any longer. No,
well, it makes sense. You have a recruiting guy, and that's why we always had one in Alabama, one away from Alabama. Joseph lives in Florida. He's able to see a lot of guys. He's on his way to see Michael DeBose today.
Charlie and Jimmy right there in T-town, so
Yeah, yeah, short drives
on the
and covering the
ground.
team every day. They got to do all that stuff. So,
Yep, yep, that's the setup. Absolutely. Hey, we've got a comment or two maybe here in the viewer chat that will also get to. Patrick Trotter here says, I heard someone saying yesterday that Bama is going to probably have about 1,400 yards of rushing offense. Um, I'm thinking more around 2,500 if they utilize the offense properly. Patrick's idea of the proper offense. Here's the thing that I'm thinking too, though, and we even saw some of this, Tim, in the 8A game. Going to have to be careful with just looking at rushing totals because some of the ways, a lot of the ways it looks like Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan are going to get guys the football really could be considered rushing plays, whether it's jet sweeps or quick passing game, those type of things. That's what I'm thinking. There's complementary things to the run game that I think are going to be more in play too. What do you think?
yeah, I think with Jalen, you probably will. I mean, I think your running back's going to get you 100 yards a game in a 14, so that for I agree it's going to be over 1,400 because Jalen's going to get you. What's he going to get you? 60 yards a game on average,
I think he's going to have more rushing yards than he had last year, in part because he's not going to get sacked 40 plus times. That's going to help.
That
But I
will
think
help.
even just in terms of design runs, there's going to be more for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're going to see a more wide open. I think you're going to see a lot of more of those plays designed. I didn't feel like there was a ton of plays designed for him last year consistently. Did you? I felt like in certain games we saw it,
Surprisingly not.
but a
Yeah.
lot of times was just, our boy just getting it after it.
I think I think I think Kalen DeBoer is excited about Jalen Milrow as much as he is where the run game is concerned, as he is in the development and the progress that he's seeing from Jalen as a passer. I think Kalen's fine with getting this guy going in the run game, perhaps more so than even Tommy Reese and Nick Saban were in 2023. Z Frank 94 here, and we'll wrap it up with this, Tim. Is there rumblings of moving King Mack or Cam Howard to cornerback, or will both be strictly safety depth? Everything I've seen about Cam Howard is that he is a safety, Tim.
Yeah.
Now, King Mack, you've heard and seen some things about versatility, maybe more so where that Husky position is concerned than, say, straight up playing some corner.
Yeah, I think the thing with King is he has more versatility. He's got more years of eligibility also. He was lined for Penn State after talking to my friend Sean Fitz, who runs our Penn State side. He said he was I think he said there's their fourth safety, and they had high hopes for him coming up. I think he was in a situation where he was behind some pretty good players they liked with more experience. So he has some versatility to his game. I feel like he's a top 100 recruit too. So a little bit more national. The portal guys, the perception with portal always goes back to their recruiting profile, which I find funny because if they were a two-star, but then, All American at UNCC, not saying they were, they still will go to the four-star who hadn't played at that other university. But that's just a side note. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't say it's just depth because they need guys that can compete and guys that can come in and make plays when needed.
And there you go. That's a wrap for the roundtable mailbag with some bonus chat questions thrown in there as well. We appreciate all of them. Thank you so much to our subscribers at BamaOnLine.com for contributing as always, and also to you, our viewers. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. Just hit that subscribe button right now. Hit a like for us if you don't mind. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here. Tim, anything else before we get out of here? You're going to be traveling here in the coming days. We may try to hook up internationally. That could be a
Yeah, I
first for
think
the
that,
show.
yeah, I'm going to see about possibly, because the time difference puts me, let's see, at my window, my break window, which is about
The
4 to
morning here.
5. Well, you
Oh,
kinda like, we try to get after it when we're traveling, but at some point, I'm gonna need a vacation from my family, and I know, at least, I need like and they need it too. They need an hour of me smoking a cigar and talking to friends and adults.
Absolutely.
And they need, when we rest and we go out to dinner and go back out that night. So we'll find some windows. We'll
Gonna be
find
up
some
at like
windows to
you're
do
gonna be
some
up at
good
like
stuff.
3, 4 a.m. watching NBA playoffs. What you're gonna
Dude,
be
that was a
doing.
mess. I was so Hawaii got me the most. I think your
Yeah.
your daughter would be able to talk to me because like we went to Mother's Day. It's like 8:30 in the morning. We went to this little Hawaiian place. It was really awesome for Mother's Day. And I got a text from a buddy that said the Braves are up 2-0. It's like I was like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is happening? And then during that same thing, it was like 3 o'clock, broad daylight. I was out sitting in the smoking section, smoking a cigar, broad daylight. People were like at work, and I'm watching the NBA playoffs. So it
It's
was
nuts.
Hawaii was really different. Now Europe, I got a little bit better grip on, and I got some friends that are so jacked up with their real life that we've never been closer than when I'm in Europe because their schedule's so butt backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Hawaii's
up.
nuts because you could have that noon college football game. It's 7 a.m. in Hawaii. As soon as you wake up, I mean, you roll out the rack.
I talked to some of the natives that lived there, and they kind of explained like how it was hard to watch college football and how to get up and their time windows to watch sports just in general.
Yeah. Bob closing us out here. OMG, Alabama has already scored 2 runs in softball. Wow. First strike for Patrick Murphy's team against LSU in a second round SEC tournament game. That
They're
game is
playing
airing.
already.
They're playing right now. They first pitch, I believe, was 10 a.m. Central in that
Oh,
matchup with LSU. So you can find that, I'm sure, at SEC Network after you leave us here on our YouTube channel.
very
Hey,
nice.
man, my man, Thanafan Rogers says, try watching from Thailand. I
Hey,
tried to actually watch golf in Thailand from here last week, and that was late night for sure.
I'm trying to go to Thailand. I'm trying to go to Japan, maybe Vietnam, which looks fantastic. But dude, that flight, 24 hours on a
It's like
flight.
Australia, man. I'd love to go to
uh,
Australia, and it's even further to what you're talking about.
I think what we're gonna do, I'm going. I'm going somewhere in Asia. They got too much respect for the culture not to, but I do think I'm gonna fly somewhere halfway and spend 3 days and then fly the other half because I just don't think I can be on the at least squeeze in another, city for 3
Yeah,
nights where I could, kinda make it a double trip, but
go to Hawaii again or something, and then go from there. Maybe I don't know. I don't even know
yeah.
which way do you go. You go west, right? Or do you? Is it shorter to go? I mean, it's so
Every
far.
time I said griped is 24 hours, everybody's like, "You dumb, what did you take us on the other side of the world?" I was like, "I didn't know it was that far."
I want to go to Australia, New Zealand, man, but my old ass, I just don't know. You
Yeah,
know,
you can do it. New Zealand looks fantastic.
it
Thailand
looks
looks
awesome.
fantastic. Vietnam, look into that. That looks like an amazing country, which I had no idea until I was older.
I've heard Iceland is underrated,
Yeah.
actually.
The
I don't.
one thing everybody who's ever done that they've loved has been the Alaskan cruise. I've never
My
heard
my
anything but
folks have done
five-star.
it. They loved
They
it.
love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody that's did this cruise has
The
absolutely
wife
loved.
wants to do that one. She wants to do
They
that.
love it. Like it's a
Yeah.
five-star event. Usually, and enough people have went to have a good enough, nice enough sample size, but you always have a naysayer. You always have the guy that doubts, like has to keep it a little bit more real than others. And I've never heard that about that cruise, so might be something we do in the future. I've only had one cruise experience, and it was I didn't plan well.
Come for the Crimson Tide talk. Stay for the Travel Network here on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Hey, Tim, look forward to catching up again real soon. Recruiting
And
talk. We're going to,
tomorrow, don't forget
yes,
tomorrow that we almost forgot Chad Simmons.
Chad Simmons going to be
Chadwick.
on we're going quad box with Chad, right?
Yeah,
Tomorrow?
we're going to bring in Andrew at some point. Um, we've had ours to be our second guest. We're excited about Chad. We had Steve Wiltfong, the Fonger.
Long
The
bombs. Yeah.
Fonger himself was our first guest. We kind of waited for him to come over, and very good, very much a friend of the program. And now we're going to have Chad, and we've got some more guys coming. Of course, Charles Power, Cody
we need to
Belair.
get Charles on here.
Yeah, Philip Dukes is a guy I want to talk to. He's
Mm-hmm.
does a good job, has that energy for sports that I have, getting to know
Yeah.
Philip better. And so many more guys in our network that we love to hang out with. So tomorrow you will be seeing us again.
That's right. With Chad Simmons right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. For Tim Watts, Travis Reier, thanks again for joining us. And until next time, so long, everybody.